Kunta, you don't have to curse all the time to get your point across. Children, just as like an adult, if I walk up to somebody, cussing you out, first thing you're gonna do is first off, you're gonna block me out. Hold on, wait a minute, what? Don't approach nobody that way. And it's the same thing with children, because children are innocent, to an extent to where they don't know. They don't know if they haven't been taught. And if they have been taught and they just being bad, or as you would say, I say they just being kids, because we all went through that. But they learning their way through. But you don't have to beat. Look. Yeah.
Must be going somewhere.
Yeah, it's about 6 of them. You don't have to beat a child to get your point across. Sit and talk to them. Learn what's going on in their head, because it's children in elementary school committing suicide because they feel like they can't talk to their parents, or they feel like they being bullied, and
that's true.
And their parents don't even know what's going on. Why did my child commit suicide? I didn't even know they was being bullied. Do you sit and talk to your child? Do you sit and see what's they on a day-to-day basis what's going on with them? You know what I'm saying? You don't have to beat them. Yeah, if they do wrong, don't beat them. Because they're going to continuously make mistakes even after they get older and grow up and get out of the house. You going to beat them then? You can't continuously beat on somebody to get your point across. It's not the way to do it. Talk through it. You know what I'm saying? Now, sometimes they deserve a behind whooping, yeah. But, my husband...
I just did I did the way I was raised.
He started when he was 2 years old. Need a spanking. No.
Yeah. But I think the most misunderstood thing about black males growing up in that type of environment, like, I was mad at my dad for a long time, because when coming up, my dad ended up he ended up losing his job. He ended up getting laid off. And before then, my dad, I have memories of my dad coming in from work, and we home and my mom cooking, and it went from that to my dad was working at a place in Vidalia, Georgia called Federal Pacific, and I remember, and he came in, and I was young, and he told my mom that they had a layoff and he had been laid off, so he didn't have a job anymore. Now imagine being an older black man up in age with a wife who ain't working. My mom wasn't working at the time, and you got 5 kids in the household that you have to provide for. So he got laid off, and I remember my dad coming in looking for jobs and trying to find stuff. He couldn't find anything, so they decided that we were going to move to Florida. It would be better. So my dad had a best friend that he hung with, and they moved too. My Aunt Phyllis' husband. And we end up all moving to Florida at the same time, thinking that they'll find a job, and they couldn't find work. They came in day after day trying to find work. So it went from that to now they were drinking heavy. Now they were coming in smoking weed. Now they came in, they snorting powder. Then it eventually evolved into crack cocaine. And me at this age, at about 8, seeing my dad on crack, seeing my mom and him fight, and he got to the point where he was stealing stuff, taking it out of the house and selling it. And, my mom finally had got a job, and it just wasn't balanced. She's trying to bring in, and he's at a point to where he had given up in life, with the stress that he had, I guess, endured from just not being able to provide for us. So my mom put him out, and she tried to continue, to take care of us. And, we were living in project homes and apartments in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, low income housing. And, I used to go see my dad, and I would literally go to like the crack house and hang out with him. And as a young man, I remember my dad having a conversation with me one time, and he had been to rehab, and he came back from rehab, and he was trying to find work, and he still couldn't find work. And we got to admit, back then, if you imagine now, even with my job, I have a pretty decent job right now, but how hard it is and the racism I see on job. Can you imagine back then in the late 80s, mid 80s, late 80s, how hard?
Jesus.
Oh Lord, pray for them.
Oh Lord, pray for these people.
It was an accident. But how hard it could have been back then with, all these laws and how they were treated. But I didn't know at that young age, so you know, my dad told me, he say, I never meant for this to happen. And I was sitting outside, and you know, he was having a conversation with me like I was an adult. And he said, life just got the best of me, you know. And me remembering this conversation, you know, because at the time he was actually changing the tire on my mom's car, and the jack slipped out from under the car and popped him in the face. And when it did that, he sat beside me and he started talking to me. And you know, I got to the point, my mom finally, you know, he slipped back in the smoking crack again, stealing again, because my mom had let him move back in, so she had to kick him out again. But to say all that, I was hating my dad as I grew up. I'm like, man, like, you know, what kind of dad or what kind of man get to an age of 30 something and just give up on his family and leave and walk out. As I got older, I started understanding the things that he went through. Not having a job, me dealing with child support, dealing with baby mamas, you know what I'm saying? Now as I have grown, you know, I've had to go to my dad's graveside and, you know, apologize for the thoughts that I had or how I felt about him. Because as a black man, we have no one, and I can imagine no one to vent to, no one to sit down and talk to. And my wife ended up being my peace, because before then, and before she, you know, I was hell. You know what I'm saying? I ain't gonna sit here and lie. I ain't gonna sit here and sugarcoat, act like I was the best thing. Like, when I got shot for a reason, trust me. But now she's helped me to understand life and how to forgive people, and made me think and understand, you know, what you mad with your dad about, or what you mad with your mom about. You know, you have to understand this is how the world works. And we deal with this pressure